Everything you need to know about the book of Exodus in one complete summary. When we hear the word Exodus, it's like a clarion call echoing through the chambers of time. It isn't just a story, it's a journey, a divine roadmap showing humanity's struggles, triumphs, and ultimate liberation. Let's imagine ourselves stepping into the sandals of the Israelites, feeling the grit of the desert beneath us, the weight of slavery behind us, and the promise of freedom ahead. But let me ask you, what does freedom really mean to you? Is it simply the absence of chains? Or something much deeper? We begin in Egypt, a land of grandeur and oppression. The Israelites, God's chosen people, are enslaved under Pharaoh's brutal regime. The scene is stark, men breaking their backs in the sun, women clinging to their children, and an air thick with despair. Yet, even in this darkness, a faint light flickers, the covenant made to their ancestor Abraham. It's the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, a home where they can live as free people under the guidance of their Creator. And then Moses enters the story. A man of dual identities, born a Hebrew but raised in Pharaoh's court. He carries both the privilege of royalty and the burden of his people's suffering. But Moses is no hero at first glance. He's a fugitive, haunted by his past mistakes. Doesn't that sound familiar? How often do we feel unworthy to take on the challenges that life throws at us? But here's the kicker: God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. God appears to Moses in a burning bush, a flame that doesn't consume, a symbol of divine presence that refuses to be extinguished. It's here that God reveals His name: I am who I am. This isn't just a name, it's a declaration of eternal existence and unchanging purpose. Think about it. In a world where everything seems fleeting and uncertain, what does it mean to trust in something eternal? Moses is tasked with confronting Pharaoh and demanding the release of the Israelites. Now, picture this: a shepherd armed with nothing but a staff and God's command standing before the most powerful ruler of the ancient world. It's a moment brimming with tension. And yet, Moses goes, stammering tongue and all. What would you do if you were Moses? Would you go? Or would you let fear dictate your actions? Pharaoh, of course, resists. And what follows is a cosmic showdown. The 10 plagues aren't just random acts of judgment, they're direct challenges to the gods of Egypt, exposing their powerlessness before the one true God. Water turns to blood. Frogs cover the land. Darkness descends. And finally, the firstborn of Egypt are struck down. Each plague whispers the same message: God's authority is supreme. The final plague brings us to the Passover, a night of profound significance. The Israelites are instructed to sacrifice a spotless lamb and mark their doorposts with its blood. As the angel of death passes through Egypt, it spares the homes covered by the blood. This isn't just a historical event, it's a foreshadowing of ultimate redemption. Can you see the parallels? What sacrifices are you willing to make to protect what you hold most dear? The Israelites leave Egypt in haste, their bread unleavened, their hearts heavy with the weight of the unknown. They reach the Red Sea, a natural barrier that seems impossible to cross. And then God acts. Moses raises his staff. The waters part, and the people walk through on dry ground. It's a cinematic moment, one that reminds us that when we reach the end of our strength, that's often where God begins. But freedom isn't just about escape, it's about transformation. The journey through the wilderness is as much about reshaping the Israelites' identity as it is about reaching the promised land. They complain, doubt, and rebel, showing us that liberation is as much an internal struggle as an external one. Here's a question for you: how often do we cling to the chains of our past? Even after we've been set free? At Mount Sinai, the story reaches its theological apex. God gives the 10 Commandments, a moral compass designed to guide His people into a covenant relationship. These aren't just rules, they're an invitation to live in harmony with God and one another. But let's pause here. Do you see the commandments as restrictive or liberating? What if their true purpose is to create space for genuine freedom? Even as God establishes this covenant, the Israelites falter. While Moses is on the mountain, they create a golden calf, succumbing to the age-old temptation of idolatry. It's a sobering reminder of how easily we can misplace our trust. Where do you place your faith when the world feels uncertain? In fleeting pleasures? Or in something eternal? This is where I'll pause for now, leaving us with a crucial thought. The book of Exodus is more than a historical account, it's a mirror reflecting our struggles, doubts, and hopes. It asks us to consider what it truly means to be free, to trust, and to follow a higher calling. The wilderness within, how Exodus reveals the struggle for faith and transformation. The wilderness is not just a geographical location, it's a metaphor for the human condition. It's the space between where we've been and where we're going, a place of uncertainty and testing. For the Israelites, the wilderness becomes a crucible where their faith, identity, and resilience are refined. But let's be honest, how often do we find ourselves in a wilderness of our own? Caught between the comfort of the familiar and the fear of the unknown? How do we respond when the journey feels longer and harder than we expected? As the Israelites begin their trek through the desert, the euphoria of freedom quickly gives way to grumbling. They complain about the lack of water and food, longing for the fleshpots of Egypt. Think about that. Even after experiencing miraculous deliverance, they yearn for the predictability of their chains. Doesn't that resonate with us? How often do we settle for less because it feels safer than stepping into the uncertainty of something greater? In response, God provides manna, a mysterious bread from heaven, and quail for meat. But there's a catch: the manna must be gathered daily, and hoarding it results in spoilage. It's a lesson in trust that God will provide what we need. Not just once, but every single day. Here's a challenge: do we trust in our daily provision? Or are we constantly stockpiling out of fear that it won't be enough? The journey also brings moments of incredible provision and protection. When the Israelites are attacked by the Amalekites, Moses stands on a hill, staff in hand, as Joshua leads the battle. As long as Moses keeps his hands raised, the Israelites prevail. But when his arms grow weary, they begin to falter. Aaron and Hur step in, holding up Moses' arms until the victory is won. This moment is profound. It shows us that even the strongest among us need support. Who are the Aarons and Hurs in your life? And whose arms are you holding up when they grow tired? At Mount Sinai, the covenant is solidified. God's presence descends on the mountain in thunder and fire. A moment so awe-inspiring that the people tremble in fear. Moses ascends to meet God and receives not only the 10 Commandments but detailed instructions for building the tabernacle, a sacred space where God will dwell among His people. The tabernacle is rich with symbolism, from the Ark of the Covenant to the golden lampstand, each element pointing to God's holiness and desire for relationship. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. While Moses is on the mountain, the people grow restless, feeling abandoned. They pressure Aaron to create a tangible god, a golden calf. It's a devastating moment, one that reveals the human tendency to seek control when faced with uncertainty. Can you see the golden calves in your own life? The things you turn to for comfort when God's presence feels distant? Moses returns to find the camp in chaos. In righteous anger, he shatters the tablets of the law and confronts the people. But instead of abandoning them, he intercedes on their behalf, pleading with God to forgive their sin. It's a powerful act of mediation, one that foreshadows the ultimate intercessor. Have you ever considered the cost of standing in the gap for others? Of being a bridge between brokenness and reconciliation? Despite their rebellion, God renews the covenant. New tablets are chiseled, and the construction of the tabernacle begins. It's a testament to God's patience and mercy, a reminder that He doesn't give up on us even when we fall short. But here's a question to ponder: how do you respond to second chances? Do you embrace them? Or do you let guilt and shame hold you back? As the tabernacle is completed, God's presence fills it in the form of a cloud by day and fire by night. This visible manifestation serves as a guide, leading the Israelites on their journey. But it's more than that, it's a reminder that God is not distant. He chooses to dwell among His people, even in their imperfections. What would it look like for you to invite that same presence into your life? To let it guide you through your own wilderness? The wilderness, though harsh, is transformative. It strips away the false securities of Egypt and prepares the Israelites for the promised land. But not everyone makes it. An entire generation, marked by doubt and disobedience, perishes in the desert. It's a sobering reality that raises an uncomfortable question: what are we holding on to that might keep us from stepping into the fullness of our destiny? Exodus isn't just about liberation from physical bondage, it's about liberation from the internal chains of fear, doubt, and rebellion. It's about learning to trust a God who provides, protects, and guides, even when the road is hard and the destination seems far off. The promised land awaits, lessons of legacy and fulfillment in Exodus. As we journey into the final chapters of Exodus, we find ourselves on the threshold of the promised land, not just a physical place but a profound symbol of fulfillment, purpose, and divine faithfulness. Yet, the closer we get, the more apparent it becomes that the journey itself is as transformative as the destination. And isn't that true for us? How often do we realize, looking back, that the process of getting there shaped us more than the arrival ever could? The Israelites, now molded by the wilderness, have been taught to rely on God for sustenance, protection, and guidance. They've received the law, constructed the tabernacle, and witnessed countless signs of divine power. But even with all these experiences, the journey remains fraught with challenges. Why? Because true transformation requires not just external deliverance but internal renewal. Let me ask you, are you willing to confront the wilderness within you to reach your promised land? The tabernacle, completed in intricate detail, stands as a testament to what can be accomplished, and human hands are guided by divine instruction. It's not merely a structure, it's a sacred meeting place, a tangible reminder that God chooses to dwell among His people. Every element, the Ark of the Covenant, the altar of incense, the golden lampstand, points to deeper truths about God's nature and His relationship with humanity. Have you ever considered what your own tabernacle might look like? What space in your life have you set apart for divine connection? As the cloud of God's presence descends upon the tabernacle, the Israelites are filled with awe. This moment encapsulates the essence of Exodus, a God who is both transcendent and immanent, utterly holy yet intimately close. But with this closeness comes responsibility. The Israelites are called to live as a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. This isn't just about rituals or rules, it's about embodying God's character in every aspect of life. What would it mean for you to live in such a way that your actions reflect the divine? The journey to the promised land is not without its setbacks. The Israelites' trust is tested time and again, revealing their human frailty. But God's faithfulness never wavers. He provides water from a rock, sustains them with manna, and defeats their enemies. Each miracle serves as a reminder that their success depends not on their own strength but on God's provision. Think about that for a moment. How often do we try to rely solely on our own abilities, forgetting that we were never meant to carry the burden alone? Perhaps the most striking lesson of Exodus is the tension between freedom and responsibility. The Israelites are free from Egypt's tyranny, but they are now bound by a covenant, a relationship that requires commitment and obedience. Freedom, it turns out, is not the absence of constraints but the presence of the right ones. What constraints guide your life? Are they leading you toward your highest potential or away from it? As we approach the conclusion of Exodus, the narrative leaves us with a sense of both fulfillment and anticipation. The Israelites are poised to enter the promised land, but their story is far from over. They've been shaped by their experiences, but they must now decide how to carry those lessons forward. And isn't that the ultimate question for all of us? How will you take what you've learned in your wilderness and use it to build your legacy? Exodus is a story of liberation, transformation, and divine faithfulness. It's a journey that mirrors our own, reminding us that the road to fulfillment is rarely straight or easy. It challenges us to trust, to persevere, and to embrace the process of becoming. But most of all, it invites us to remember that we are never alone, that the same God who parted the Red Sea and led his people through the wilderness is still at work, guiding us toward our own promised land. So now I leave you with a final question, one that lingers long after the last word is spoken. What is your promised land? And what are you willing to endure, to sacrifice, and to transform in order to reach it?